Good morning. You're watching DeProgram with Ted Rall and Jamarl Thomas. It is Thursday, July 16th, 2026. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for liking, following, and sharing the show. And good morning, Jamarl.
Good morning. How you doing this
I
morning?
am I'm good. Dealing with the very weird light of the haze. Do you have that in DC? We're having Canadian wildfire haze up here, and it's sort of like that weird filtered like movie set light that you get like during a solar eclipse. I
Yeah,
mean, it's not ugly, but it's strange.
yeah. Well, I'm in Richmond,
Hmm. Oh, right. I
but
always forget about that.
it's okay. Well, I lived in DC for the what 5 years, give or
Yeah.
take. Maryland and DC. No, we don't have it here, so you can see it. You can see the fire. I'm not fire, but you can see the results of the fire.
Hmm. Okay. Well, I hope you don't get it because it is not good for people with respiratory conditions. But anyway, hopefully it'll all blow over. I guess this is becoming a new normal thing. It's not quite Blade Runner 2047 yet, like it was in New York 3 years ago. But with the orange skies. But that can happen anytime. Um,
Exactly.
Okay, so lots to talk about. We'll do the keeping thing with Robbie and what we're going to ask everyone to do on his Putinbot gaming page over on Rumble. We'll do that a little later when there's more people have signed on, so everyone hears it and people don't have to hear it multiple times. But I thought okay, so. Basically, Trump's talking tonight. I should point out that one of the most famous political cartoonists in the country, Pat Oliphant, has died. Also, China, I thought you would be interested in this, JT, has now wildly surpassed the United States on the list of the countries that are viewed most favorably around the world by this giant poll that the Pew Research Center does every year. And last and probably least, um, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War or Secretary of Defense, depending, is going to screen all American warfighters, as he calls them. I thought soldiers and airmen and Marines was good enough, but apparently not. Anyway, he's going to screen all soldiers for low T to make sure that they're man enough to have, as he puts it, keeping them on the leading edge of lethality. So, yeah, there's a lot. Can we get rid of this Pete Hegseth thing first? Because it is so funny.
Yeah, this is humiliating. Like imagine you join the U.S. military for hashtag reasons, right?
Mhm.
Maybe you needed money. Maybe you
Sure.
got a hard on for murdering people abroad. Who knows? Whatever.
Also, sure. Yeah.
Right. And they said, okay, sir, soldier, we need to take labs to make sure that your testosterone is up to the killing level that we require. Okay. And then what are you going to do? Do like treatments of testosterone therapy where you're giving people shots? Because testosterone is not a pill. You can't take it as a pill. You have to take it as a shot. It needs to be injected in you, or you can rub it on your testicles. Meaning you can't, and then other people can't touch you, like other women can't touch that area because they, like,
Right. Yeah. They'll get it. Right. Yeah.
are you really doing that to your men?
And
Like,
now with
meaning,
Lindsey Graham gone, there's one less person to smear it on your testicles.
yeah, it's weird. I mean, so it's like, okay, so I have to come in for routine shots now, just because I wanted to be in the military, but my testosterone is not up to snuff for it.
There's
It
a lot of
feels
issues.
ridiculous.
There's a lot of issues here, right? Like, first of all, I mean, I guess it's like they're not going to say, okay, so if we find out that you're not manly man and you're
You're
not
not man
manly
enough.
enough, you're not manly enough to be psychotic. By the way, too much testosterone makes you fucking psychopathic. And, I mean, we do. So there's so much to unravel here. I mean, there's, or unspool, right? I mean, there's the fact that the military can do this once you sign your contract with them. They can inject you with anything they want. Ask the
Yeah,
Tuskegee Airmen, right? I mean, the Tuskegee experiment, not the Tuskegee Airmen. And I mean, you can. There's also the fact that low testosterone is actually a problem in American society and globally. Testosterone has been dropping off a cliff. Over on TMI, Manila and I interviewed an expert on this recently. You can go check it out if you're interested. But it was fascinating. Basically, most guys are much less testosterone than they used to be. I mean, I probably don't have as high testosterone as I would have 100 years ago, which is why at the age of 62, I still have a lot of hair, right? Like you tend to lose your hair more if you have more testosterone. Um, so there's a lot here, but I mean, to me, and so it's kind of like sometimes the right and the Trumpies, they focus on something that's legit. Like, there's an environmental issue with low testosterone, and it has implications to society. It adds to the low fertility rate, for example. Um, but then what they do is they it goes on some weird curve where it focuses on something that's not really important, right? Like whether you're a good soldier or sailor has very little to do with how much testosterone you have in your bloodstream, right?
Right.
I mean, and yet it is a reflection of massive environmental degradation and the fact that we're all being poisoned. This is a Maha issue, not a MAGA issue, and like this is like where RFK should be stepping in to talk about things like this. But it's not. So it's just sort of everything goes sideways with this administration. Um,
It's it's not pertinent to being a soldier.
no,
Like that's what makes this so weird. So if I'm fighting, if I'm in a fighter jet, what does my testosterone have to do with whether or not I hit the target in the fighter jet? I'm a
nada.
guy in a job at that point. The job is killing, but it's not. I'm not in the jet, hopped up, roided out, trying to do
Right, right. I
like you're
mean,
doing a job. Like, hey, go and fire multiple missiles at this target. Okay, what does your testosterone have to do with that?
nothing. Right. I
Not
mean,
one thing.
so yeah. I mean, if this were simply an issue of trying to just sort of as across the board, we want all American soldiers to be members of the military to be as healthy as possible, and that part of male health is to have appropriate testosterone levels. Then I would say that's great if that's something that they're interested in doing. But this seems to be more like they're little boys, right? Like Pete Hegseth is a child, and he's like, his rhetoric is all about like maximum lethality. Like, listen to yourself, okay? I mean, this is not. I don't think you understand your own job. I don't think you understand what the military is or should be or what it's supposed to do, whether it's serving the civilian regime or whether it's building empire or whatever. I just don't think. I mean, I think you're a fool.
He is a fool. I mean, look, even if you're talking about mercs, right? Or special forces. Okay, but those guys are already the peak of, Chadness, right? They're already peak Chads. You know,
Yeah,
these are guys with thick necks and
right.
they're like, yeah, let's go and shoot people in the face and all that. Meaning, why do I need to test that guy testosterone? He is obviously already in that mindset of peak Chadness. Like, I hope you get my point. Like, that guy is already putting himself through some of the most insane physical trials and trauma in order to be part of the Special Forces organization. At the end of that, let's say he passes all of the tests, and the tests are insane, like the things that they do to the people when they want to be in Special Forces. Can you imagine the process of the guy getting the Special Forces position, and then Hegseth comes along and says, "Hey, we need to test your testosterone to make sure that you're up to snuff." What if
Yeah,
it's low? What if it's low?
right.
Meaning he did all of that, passed it, and then you're going to tell him his testosterone is low. At that point, what does it matter? He's already done everything necessary in order to pass in the special forces. Why do you need to give him, even more so?
It
I
is,
don't know.
yeah, it is demoralizing. It's kind of like when you at a company when you've been hired, and then like later there's new management or there's your company's bought, and then you have to re-interview for the job you've already been doing.
Yes. Well, this is This is even a weirder re-interview because it's biology.
Right.
Like it's I'm testing your biology to see whether or not you're up to some snuff that we want you to be up to. That and honesty has nothing to do with you doing the job. It's
Well,
that
it's
much.
it's a little bit
Biology doesn't
eugenic.
matter.
Isn't it a little bit eugenicsy too? I mean, it reminds me of like
Take that
the
too.
Nazis and phrenology and using calipers to try to figure out if people are racially superior based on the ratio of their
Yeah, I was thinking
forehead
that.
to their this or that. And it's a little bit like you're trying to figure things. You're trying to quantify and rationalize something that can't really be measured, which is, is someone effective, and not just in combat, right? Because only a minority of soldiers are ever going to see or be trained for combat anyway.
Do you know what I think this is? Honestly, I think, and I could be completely wrong here, but I think that what this is, and to your point, JT, biology doesn't matter because under the previous president, we had men cosplaying as women or women cosplaying as men, and you were told that you have to ignore biology and accept whatever the hell it is that's in their mind. This is blowback from that. So this is that pendulum going the other way. So before we had girly men, dudes in dresses and stuff in the military, and now you got old Petey out there saying we are going to be the most lethal fighting force with real men. That's what this is. This has nothing to do with being aggressive in combat. This has to push back against the woke trans
So you're
stuff.
saying the tarred pendulum has just swung to the other side.
Of course. I
The
mean,
thing is, though,
that's how we do
you
things
can
in this country.
Yeah,
a
now you're
trans man, like meaning a man who is trans as a woman with the testosterone that's through the roof. Like
true.
real,
True.
right? Because it's still a man. It's like to your point, just because they're like, it's like I'm a woman and they have a full beard and all of this other stuff. Their testosterone may be through the roof. Like I guess I don't know, man. It feels soft eugenicsy. Fair
Yeah,
enough. I wouldn't take issue with it if it was men have low sperm counts, men have low testosterone. This is a
that's all
medical
true.
issue. We
Yeah.
need to do something about it as a country, and we're going to be looking into this. Okay, that I get,
Hmm.
right? Or childhood illness, that I get.
Sure.
This, I don't see how it applies.
Now
I just don't. I
it's
mean,
kind of
look,
it's kind
if
of
we
gay in both meanings of the word.
if we build 100,000 man military in order to invade somewhere,
Mm.
but when do we do that? Like when are we really talking about having a large ground war where we need our men to be so keyed up
Well,
and
yeah, like I'm glad you brought that up because there's a comment here from Golden Talon that is definitely worth discussing here. Testosterone levels are relevant in combat because a man's capability for aggression is proportionate to his testosterone level. I
I
mean,
get that.
if combat, yeah, but combat is not what combat used to be. I mean,
Right.
right? I mean, it's not hand to hand. It's not trench warfare. It's drones. It's a lot of it's remote. Most of it's remote. It's by air. I mean, we're currently at war against Iran. There's no ground troops. I mean, you're like you said, JT. I mean, pilot doesn't matter. I don't think your
It's
pilot needs to
running
be
guy.
aggressive. I mean, we're seeing all the mass shootings by ICE goons who are mostly ex-military, right? They're all roided up, and part of the reason that they're killing innocent bystanders, as well as people that they're actually shooting at, is and endangering themselves, is because they're roided up. I mean,
Yeah.
being roided up makes you dumb,
Yeah.
and so it's like I, again, I view low testosterone as a health issue. I just don't see it as a maximum lethality issue. It's like video. It's like a video. This is what happens when the Secretary of Defense is a former Fox News weekend host, who plays a lot of video games.
And he's in makeup.
Right,
like
right.
like he's
Good point.
like imagine the ridiculousness of a man wearing makeup talking about maximum lethality.
And he's a pretty boy too, right?
Yeah. He's a pretty boy in makeup with a
That guy,
makeup room.
spends more time in front of the mirror in the morning than most ladies do before they go out.
Yeah, it's like, do I look okay? Do I look okay? It's like, okay, your mascara is running a little.
Does my white
Maximum
nationalist
lethality.
does my
You
white
must have
nationalist tattoo
maximum
make me
testosterone. Pete needs to tell me his testosterone.
does my Nazi tattoo make me look fat?
Yeah, right. I need to know Pete's testosterone level. If we're gonna go with
Yeah.
this, if we're gonna ride this boat. What is your level, Bo?
I want to know what Lindsay's was.
Oh, Miss Lindsley.
I mean, he never met a war he didn't like, so
That is also true.
Okay, let's do some
He's gonna
comments.
compensate.
We can move on. I mean, I feel like we've disposed of this, but we had to. Harry Ballsack, speaking of which, hey, Robbie, almost done with all your playlists on YouTube. Started on Rumble yesterday. Got 2 computers with multiple windows open running. I'm with you. I've been doing this kind of shit for years. So have I, Robbie. Robbie, why don't you come on? What we're asking everyone to do, Robbie took a financial haircut due to losing losing a John gig, and so anyway, we're asking everybody go to Rumble, go to Putinbot Gaming, go to a playlist, a long one, and let it play, whether you game or not, whether you watch it or not. Sometimes I can't help but look at it because it's like the imagery is pretty compelling, even though I don't game. So
We got to fix that. We got to get you gaming, Ted.
by the way, I got to ask you. Okay, so when my computer goes into, I have a Mac. When it goes to sleep,
Mhm.
does the video keep playing or does it stop playing?
Usually it'll stop if it goes to sleep.
Okay, so we need to ask people, and I'm going to do this after the show, to set your computer not to go to sleep as quickly, so or at all.
Let's give it a couple hours. I mean, the numbers have been absolutely fantastic over the last few days. So seriously, thank y'all. With y'all's help, with
This
what
won't
y'all are
cost
doing.
you anything except, I don't know, the power that's running your computer, but that's it.
Yeah, for sure. And seriously, because without y'all's support, I told JT and Ted this would be my last month doing this show and the next one because I got bills to pay. And I
Well, I hope this works.
Oh, me too. I mean, we'll find out, and
All right.
we'll just kind of go from there.
All right, we'll figure it out. All right, thanks, Robbie. Okay, Racy 2020 has just gifted a membership to Mama Turtle. Ray is our always makes it rain here, so thank you very much. FUSO, thanks for the $1. Didn't the government give saltpeter to soldiers and inmates to lower their libido? Now let's supercharge them. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The government can never get their fucking stories straight. Like, beginning of the pandemic, no one needs a mask. Mask? You don't need a mask. And then, like a couple of weeks later, if you don't wear a mask, we'll kill you. And then it's like the Governor Hochul, you're wearing a mask, you must be a criminal. Like, what?
It's like, make up your mind. Which one is?
Yeah. Like, figure out your oppression. Do I have to wear the yellow star or not? Tell me.
No.
So I mean, it's a very good point here. Justice Q2X, thanks for bringing up this question because I looked at it this morning. I'm sure you did too, JT. Mass protests have erupted across major Ukrainian cities opposing Zelensky's surprise dismissal of his popular defense minister, Mikhailo Fedorov. What do you make of this story? I mean, basically, Fedorov was he was well liked among Ukrainians. It's hard to tell because, frankly, Ukraine doesn't have a free press anymore, and there's rigid military censorship. There's not like reliable polling, but so to the extent that we know this dude was popular, he was most known for innovating and updating Ukraine's drone program, which has obviously been centered to their war against Russia. Why do you think there's been Zelensky's decided to get rid of this dude in the shakeup at this time? And like, why are people are afraid to protest in Ukraine? You can end up, in a very bad place being tortured.
Well, it depends. Okay, so 2 things. Zelensky has been getting rid of anybody that has been a competition to Zelensky or potential competition to Zelensky. So Zelensky gets sent to the UK, almost basically in exile. He was, again, a political rival. Many of the other political rivals were either put in jail or shot. And so he has been purging, in a way, in order to insulate himself in regards to keeping himself in office. I don't know if that's what's going on, but if
At
I
least
had to
like
make,
Trump, basically, I'm the star. No one else can be the star.
pretty much, yeah, I'm the star. I'm in charge. I'm the political power in this
Mhm.
position, and anybody that rivals that are going to take an L. Um, Protests, that would be my guess. Only saw the story this morning, but that's my guess. Protests are finicky things in Ukraine. The reason why I say that is, if you remember when Nabu and Seppo were going after the various people who were in the Zelensky circle, you had protests erupt out of the blue, people holding signs and everything else. And the belief was that those protests were instant protests. Like that basically Europe and the US, especially with the organizations that they have on the ground, the NGOs and everything else, because there are plenty of them. And as you point out, there is no free media. When Trump got in office and Trump was like, I'm pulling the plug on US aid and those type of things. Well, we were paying like 90% of the media that was in Ukraine. And the majority of the media that was in many of the locations all across Europe, meaning we have been putting money into all of these things all across Europe and all across Ukraine in order to shape the perspective and the content of the media in those countries. The protests and the NGOs were also interrelated to one another. When it became a need for pressure on the Zelensky government, protests erupted out of the blue. I don't know if that's what this is related to, though. I mean, it's very possible that the press gangs and everything else have finally hit a point that the public is pissed off. I mean, if you go to many of these places, there are no men. As you're walking through the street, most of the people are women. Part of it is because so many men have been carted off and been murdered or killed in the war. And the other part of it is the men are just scared to come out the house because they don't want to get press gang.
Yeah,
So,
people don't really know because of the way the news has been covered here that actually happens in Ukraine. So what, Jamarl, you're talking about is basically you decide to go down the street to the cafe and get a coffee, and a van pulls up, and ice-style goons pile out of the van and bundle you up and send you off to the front to fight the Russians.
yes,
And because they're not getting any, people are fleeing the country. They don't want to fight in this war. They, for a variety of reasons, some political, some just are afraid or whatever. And so this has been increasing. There was a story, I guess this was early this week, maybe late last week, where increasingly the guys who drive these vans and the goons inside them are being attacked by crowds and
good,
beaten, sometimes almost to death.
good.
And the Ukrainians are going after them. The way that it was covered, though, and I think this is serious journalistic malpractice here in the United States, has been to call there have been attacks on military recruiters, they call them. Now, um,
Gangs.
if a guy bundles me up into a van and takes me to God knows what, that person is not I don't know, it's not an Uber recruiter taking me on a little trip that I hadn't planned, but I might really enjoy. That person is a kidnapper. Okay.
I mean, these people are lunatics. Like
And
they're
like,
like beating people, they're snatching people. Like people were walking their dogs and they're like snatching them and throwing them in the vans.
yeah,
Like just
yeah,
out the like imagine Domino's Pizza delivering a pizza, and as you walk out to get your pizza, a bunch of goons come and snatch the pizza guy and throw him into a
right.
van. Like
Well,
it's stuff
it's a
like that.
military recruiter. I thought a
Yeah,
military recruiter was someone who sat at a desk in a strip mall and lied to you about all the great things the U.S. military could do for you. I didn't know it was someone who snatched you off the street. I mean, I can't believe that that's how they're it's a press gang. That's what it is.
that's what
Um,
it is.
and,
It's
and so,
insane.
yeah,
These
so
people are lunatics.
along the same lines, also from the same poster, Justice Q2X, French nationalist and anti-EU groups have organized protests in Paris to oppose France's military support for Ukraine. Most recently, on July 14th, thousands of demonstrators marched to protest. So, yeah, I mean, we're getting really mixed messaging about the Russo-Ukrainian conflict. I mean, by some accounts, we're hearing that Russia's getting their ass kicked, or other accounts we're hearing that the tide that Ukraine had been losing, but now the tide is starting to turn in their favor, and they're starting to recapture territory captured from Russia. Others have been like, no, the Russian advance continues. I mean, the truth has been remarkably hard to come by for American audiences.
The truth
It's
is
not
that Russia's biggest problem right now is Vladimir Putin not being aggressive and putting this war to bed. That's the problem. Putin needs to go back to bed, let his generals fight the war. That's what they're there for, and end this thing once and for all. I don't know what Putin's doing, but he needs to extract his thumb, go take a nap, do whatever he needs. He's old now. It's time for him to let the big boys with high testosterone get out there and get the job done.
I'm pretty sure he has. Well, I mean, you do lose testosterone once you turn 60, but he probably had a lot to begin with. He's playing this
way too safe. He's playing this way too. Ted, you're a history guy. Putin is kind of like the George McClellan of the Ukraine war.
Oh Jesus!
He needs to have
reference.
He needs to have Robert E. Lee or Ulysses S. Grant just go out there and start busting heads, breaking windows, and put this thing to bed. I do not understand this whole. We took 1/4 of a mile. We are advancing. Meanwhile, downtown Moscow is getting blasted by drones. It's like, dude, what the hell? What are you doing? You're a superpower. Pretend like, just act like it. It's okay.
Should they bomb a German factory that are making those drones?
Oh hell yeah, 100%.
And what happens after they do that?
Then the United States, that's Russia gets to test the bluff, right? Will the United States trade New York City for Frankfurt? The answer is no.
Well, wait a minute. There's steps in between them.
Sure.
What happens immediately after that German factory is bombed?
The Germans are going to shit a brick. That's what's going to happen.
They're going to invoke Article 5.
They're immediately going to scream Article 5.
They're going to scream Article 5.
And they'll say, an attack on one is an attack on all. We request an emergency meeting of NATO to treat this, to respond to this unprovoked Russian act of aggression on German soil. Well, I'm just saying what they're going to say.
Of course, that's what they're going to say, but it's not unprovoked. I mean, the fact is
wait a minute. Europe is going to talk about it as if it's unprovoked, and the U.S. will also talk about it as if it's unprovoked because the U.S. is a party to the war already.
Correct. But then, though, the question has to become, and this is what's going to test the viability of NATO.
True.
Is the United States willing to? How far will the U.S. go for its little proxy project against Ukraine? Will Trump decide that he's killed enough Russians that the fact that German-made drones are being used to kill Russians inside Russia, which is obviously an aggressive act. I mean, Germany's already a co-belligerent. I'm not Russia. Germany's already a co-belligerent under international war.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I agree with everything you're saying. I guess the thing is, they've never talked about the war honestly, and they're not going to start talking about the war honestly now. Meaning the reality of it matters less than the narrative that they're going to create in order to justify it. Meaning, I don't believe that the U.S. is going to be kept out of this. I think the U.S. is going to be whipped up into it just from the fervor of what takes place. I think Europe is going to, as you point out, shit a brick.
Yeah. And
all of these countries are going to be screaming Article 5. And whether the U.S. provides a nuclear backstop, meaning, okay, you guys can fight a conventional war, which is, I think, what the U.S. is perfectly okay with. If we can sell products to Europe as Europe fight the Russians, we are okay with that. I think we're okay with that. I think we're going to use Europe like Europe is using Ukraine. Like, meaning Europe is going to be cannon fodder. And the U.S. is going to be like, great, we can get our economy back up to snuff by selling products to Europe, just like we did after the Second World War. I think that's playbook. I guess the question is, from the Russian point of view, do they want to fight a war against all of Europe? Meaning, right now, it's localized to Ukraine. Right. What happens when Finland, Estonia, Britain, France, etc. Meaning all of the airspace is now used directly, not around the edges, but all of this airspace is used. All of these countries are now platforms, and it could very well go nuclear. I mean, like all of that has to be taken in consideration.
I agree, but I think that here's the part that people miss. The man on the street in the West has a vote. So if they decide, if the Russians just take out a German factory that's being used, by the way, to kill Russians inside
Yes,
Russia,
agreed.
then what would have to happen then is that at that point the Europeans would have to be honest. Okay, we are now at war with Russia. In which case, the man on the street then finally has a vote, because right now he doesn't. That, I think, is when you're going to start seeing the yellow vests in France go up and say, no, we're going to do this. You're going to see the people in Britain say, no, we're not going to do this.
Sure.
And so that will be,
and
you can solve a political issue with a military backhand.
Okay, but I mean, you really think that representative democracies are super responsive to their publics in matters of war and peace? Look at us right here. 80% of Americans do not want to be at war with Iran, and yet we are. And only 20% of Americans believe that this war will end anytime soon. I mean, so therefore, we've all. I mean, think about it. We're all against it. We all accept that it's not going to end. And how many people are in the streets of major American cities today, or for that matter, small villages? Zero. I mean,
I think that here's.
I vacillate back and forth between your position and my own.
Yeah.
I teeter-totter. There are days where I feel just like you. Force NATO to make a choice.
Yeah, pick one.
Because you're already at war with NATO anyway.
And this is what Putin's wrestling with.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you're already at war with NATO. And
True.
you keep taking body blows and you never respond. You never, and the thing, you don't have to attack the Germans. What you could do is every railway, every train station or mile of rail from the Polish border into Western Ukraine, erase it. Take them off.
That's the way.
That's what he should do. Basically,
100%.
And Ukraine off from the rest of the world. For all intents and purposes, Ukraine is in another dimension.
For sure. And as far as Ted goes about your question about the United States, you got to remember, most Americans are only concerned about what's going on the side of our borders, and even then, that's only marginally. We're on another planet. We may as well be on Mars as far as the average American's touched by this war in Ukraine. Whereas if you're in Czechia, it's a lot closer to home.
Yeah, that's all true.
There's people with living memory about what happened the last time that people got uppity. And so this is what I'm saying is that Putin needs to go take a nap. He needs to go to bed. He's his generals do the job, finish this thing, and turn Western Ukraine into a parking lot, and then just let the Yukis know in no uncertain terms, if you do not stop, we will show you what the Russian army can do. We're going to take all of Ukraine east of the Dnieper River. We're going to take Odessa. We're going to take Ukraine or Kiev, because that's the birthplace of Russian civilization. And the discussion's not going to be how long is this going to be before it ends. The discussion is going to be is how big of a country you're going to have when this is done, and what's it going to look like. Those are two very different conversations. And for whatever reason, Putin is afraid to have that conversation.
Okay, so this is a breaking news story. It's very strange. Okay, Trump fired U.S. Attorney Roger Rogoff less than an hour after he was appointed as the top federal prosecutor for the Western District of Washington State. He was sworn in right before 8 a.m. Pacific time in downtown Seattle, but he then received an email from Trump saying that he'd been terminated while he was waiting in the lobby of the office that he was supposed to move into.
It's like you got fired on your day off.
What? So Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said this was okay, said that he had that the group of judges in Washington abandoned the time-honored process of consultation with the administration so that the selected U.S. attorney is qualified to serve in the administration. So this is just like a very very, very. I mean, I don't know. It's just it's so erratic. And then meanwhile, another strange story. I think we should talk about this a little bit. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, is convening a meeting today that will gather diplomats from dozens of countries to combat far left political terrorism.
They're
That,
trying to destroy
that should
Brazil
be
and
a
Cuba.
short meeting.
They're trying to destroy Brazil and Cuba. That's what that's about. Well, I don't know if that's what that meeting is about, but that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, they've already blockaded Cuba. There's talk about a ground invasion into Cuba. I think it was Wall Street Journal was talking about that. Well, it was either Cuba or Iran, but there was other talk about invading Cuba. They've put a 25% tariff on Brazil with the idea of destroying the economy, in which case there's a better chance for Bolsonaro Jr. To get into office, or a far right candidate to get into office in Brazil. If you've noticed, South America has turned, the pink tide is gone at this point.
Yeah, yeah,
These are right governments.
yeah.
Brazil,
No, no doubt.
last man standing.
Some more comments, and then we'll pivot a little bit. Daniel Day, hey Robbie, using my tablet to stream your videos. Thanks for the $2. Daniel Day also thanks for the $5. Hey, in the movie Civil War, I saw Pete Hegseth as the president. I see Ted playing Subnautica, Kerbal Space Progressive, Animal Crossing, and Cities Skylines. I saw the movie, and God, the movie blew. So disappointing.
The movie. Is
Civil
that
War.
recent? Was
Civil
there?
War. Yeah, it's like a year ago. V. Eteris. Don't forget that Russia, thanks for the $2, that Russia also tries to be a good friend to China, and bigger instability in the world might endanger their relationship, just like China wants peace between Iran and the U.S. ASAP. That's a good segue to one of our other stories. So Pew Research Center conducts a poll of over 40,000 people around the world to basically determine how favorable the United States and other countries are viewed by people all over the place. They now currently, the U.S. we're number 29. So of the 36 countries surveyed, the U.S. is only ahead of India, Japan, the Philippines, South Korea, and 2 other countries. U.S. favorability in Canada has dropped from 2023 to this year from 57% to 33%. China has gone up from 14% to 44%. China is now viewed more favorably than the U.S. in most of the 36 countries. China is viewed as a more reliable partner, more likely to promote peace and stability. And respondents in middle-income countries in particular tend to view China as the better partner. I don't think people are wrong about that. I mean, China is not erratic. China is steady. China is trying to be a force for economic expansion based on win-win arrangements with the countries that they interact with. They're not flexing military muscle. Even if you listen to the Prime Minister of Japan or you listen to some people in Taiwan, it's just not. It just really isn't true. The Chinese are not invading or expansionist. They're spreading their economic influence, but they're doing it fairly in accordance with all the quote unquote rules of the rules-based international order. So, I mean, it's not. I mean, I guess it just takes a while for international public perception to catch up with reality. I mean, China's been, a far more steady as she goes player internationally than the U.S. for decades.
Well, yeah. If you're building hospitals and building roads and building bridges, et cetera, in other countries, they're going to look at you favorably for it. I mean, like think back during COVID, for example, and China was giving away COVID vaccines, and the United States was pissed off about it and called it, what do you call it, medical something, basically that they were trying to buy support from other countries by using a malicious, what do they call it, malevolent something. In the documentation that came out, where the United States was putting out their policies, one of the things that they put in was deterring malevolent actors or something to that effect. I think it's either deterring malevolent actors or deterring something. But what they meant by that was Russia and China were giving away vaccines, and that in Brazil, as they were trying to give away the vaccines, that Bolsonaro at the time turned those vaccines away because the U.S. pressured him to do so. Now, Brazil had what, 600,000 people dead or something like that from COVID. It was like second highest.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea that you put that in as a success gets across U.S. government. I'm saying that to say that if your government is looking at the world through that lens, then the rest of the world is not wrong in looking at it through a lens that it is functionally insane. Whereas China, to your point, has used peace as a weapon. It's like it's in their personal, vested, societal interests for there to be peace. And so that's what they push, right?
Yeah.
But they're doing so not because they're just living life. They're doing so because it's in their economic and strategic interests. Whereas for
They've
the
thought
U.S.,
about it. They've strategized about it. They set a plan years ago, and they're just following it through.
yeah, for the U.S., chaos is a ladder.
I still think the truth is that for the U.S., the Chinese model would be far more effective, but that's not the one we've adopted.
Can't compete. They've decided somewhere along the way that we can't compete. Chaos is a ladder. Chaos
Yeah, I
is a
think
ladder.
you're wrong, but
You think we can compete with China?
Oh, 100%. But I mean, I think I think I think it's lazy. We just think this is easier. It's easier to break things than to build things.
Yeah, but that's assuming that breaking things gets you what you want. I mean, Littlefinger got killed at the end of Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
Breaking
Chaos.
things does not always it does not always get you what you want. Not in
Yeah,
the long run.
not in the
Okay.
long run. Especially when countries are looking at you like you're out of your mind. You've gone functionally insane. It's almost like a level of desperation that's hit the United States. That's what it comes across as. Even selecting Trump feels desperate. It feels like the end of a country. Like a country is like we're falling behind. We're falling behind.
Flailing.
Yeah, we're failing in some way. And the guy who says, "Hey, I can make America great again. I can make you awesome again. We are fantastic. Don't believe what the people are saying about us, et cetera, et cetera." We chose that guy. Basically,
And we
we
don't
want
have to change anything, right? We don't have to change our socioeconomic relationships internally. We don't have to do anything about infrastructure. We don't have to change our international relations. We don't have to change our approaches, even when faced with something as catastrophic as our relationship with Israel. We don't have to modify that. We
yeah.
just keep on keeping on because we're a-okay.
And then we start military campaigns. We take Venezuela. We take or tried to take Iraq. We attack Yemen. We continue what's taking place in the Middle East. Like it feels like a level of desperation.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no,
now those
agreed.
countries are wrong. Desperate, drowning men are very dangerous.
True. As you learn when you train to be a lifeguard.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the $10 donation from Osiris. What's up, Ted and Jamarl? John went back to the table. CAA ain't fooling nobody. Still hope you can get Yanis Varoufakis, Jeffrey
Varoufakis.
Sachs, and Ahmed
Varoufakis is
Apollo
fantastic.
as guests. Love the
In
show.
fact, all those people are good. Sachs is amazing.
Okay. Let's see. GovMan43. What are you talking about, Ted? Their claim to the entire South China Sea is objectively illegal. China's.
How is it objectively illegal? They're building lily pad bases. Why do they think it's illegal? The United States is running, quote, freedom of navigation things. China claims that area to be theirs. I mean, the name is even South China Sea.
Right.
I mean,
That's true. I mean, it's international waters, right? I mean, but it's a claim. It's not like they've gone to war over it.
right. And let's be clear. China has like one or two bases. The U.S. is like 800.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. A few more comments. Jabari Media, thanks for the $2. Robbie, right? I totally agree. Actually, I'm tired of it. Let's see.
Meaning
Crown
war.
Heights Brainiac, thanks for the $49.99. Much appreciated. Crown Heights. For the John, Ted, and Robbie an Apology International Fund.
What? Say that again?
It's for the John, Ted, and Robbie an Apology International Fund.
John, Ted.
Thank you. Much appreciated, Crown Heights. All right. So the Canada thing was amazing. I mean, it's not surprising given what's happened in recent, okay. Dark Works 88 points out the Gulf of America, it's ours because our name is on it. But I mean,
he just made his, it's Gulf of Mexico. He just named, look, people can name anything, right? Like, especially just randomly. I don't call that the Gulf of Mexico. Hell, I don't even accept Pluto is not a planet. I don't have to accept any of this stuff. But you can make an argument for the China thing, right? The South China Sea, et cetera. The U.S. always complain about it. I don't take a huge amount of issue with that, if I'm being honest with you. It has nothing to do with it being China. It has everything to do with it being, it's in their neighborhood. It's in their back.
Well, it's more than that. It's geography. I mean, yeah. China is, in a lot of ways, China is almost landlocked. So if you look at the map of East Asia, whoever controls that first island chain is able to completely control navigation going out of southern and central China. That is a statement of fact. And then as far as the South Pacific goes, as far as trade goes, if you're trying to, especially when it comes to oil and food, whoever controls the Straits of Malacca right there in Indonesia,
that's right.
You control everything. That's why China's doing this. The Chinese didn't wake up and say, we're going to start building all these little things and start needling the Filipinos because we're bored. They're doing it because the United States is using geography as a way to try and contain and strangle China. And here's the thing. Russia is self-sufficient because it has the resources to continue going despite the sanctions. That's not China's situation. They have a huge population, not enough food to feed those people. Xi Jinping's biggest problem is how is he going to feed 1.4 billion people every single day? And without oil, he cannot do that. And that means his head goes up on a spike. That's why the Chinese are doing this.
So I think China's claim is not, I'm not sure I agree with their claim, but it's not baseless, right? So they claim that they have historically administered what are sometimes called the Spratly, but also they call the Nansha Islands and the Shisha Islands, which have also been called the Paracel Islands, for like basically 2,000 years. And they say if that's the case, that gives you navigation rights to all the surrounding seas under international law. And that's kind of the basis of their claim, right? So they have suffered a ruling 10 years ago. The UN Convention on the Law of the Sea ruled against them and said that you can't do that because basically they don't buy the island administration argument. But it's not baseless. I mean, it's a stretch maybe under international law, but it's a flag.
That ruling, they looked at it as being biased. I mean, the United Nations is not necessarily an impartial actor in any of this.
No.
And I got to be honest, great nations don't need to pay attention to the UN.
Well,
if I'm a nation, I'm not paying attention to anything coming out of the UN at this point. They've lost any level of credibility and integrity. The genocide alone ended, for me, any notion of caring about what the UN has to say. I don't give a shit what the UN says, if I'm being bluntly honest with you. They've lost credibility. They sat there as a country where as people were effectively being eviscerated in the most heinous of ways. And the United Nations did nothing. They did squat.
That's true.
There's no such thing as international law. It doesn't exist. It's a mythology. It's words on a paper or a computer.
It's something that people would like to see happen, but it doesn't actually exist.
It doesn't. No, this is Xi Jinping's Andrew Jackson moment. You made your ruling, now come in and enforce it.
It's a theory. Yeah. International law is a theory.
If you can't enforce it, then it doesn't exist.
Okay, so thanks very much for the $20 donation from Mills446. No comment, just wanting to support. Ray, thanks for the $5. Ted, how's the new microphone fund going? Here's a $5 to help. So far, so good. I don't know. How do I sound?
Oh, you got a new mic?
No, it's just my old mic that I just wasn't using because I didn't want to have to wear my cans. I hate hot ear syndrome. Not to mention, you kind of like look like a derp. Anyway, Mr.
Screw
A.
you,
Lee.
Ted. Are you calling me a derp?
Yes.
Screw you, sir.
Yes. Mr. A. Lee derp. Mr. A. Lee, both the communists and the nationalists in Taiwan claim Qing dynasty territory. That's true. They both do. Okay, so tonight, the President of the United States is giving an Oval Office address. We know the subject. It's going to be the one thing that all voters in the United States are thinking about the most. They're very deeply concerned about affordability, jobs, high prices. They're worried about the oil prices rising because of the Iran war. They're disgusted at Israel. So healthcare is always a major problem. People don't know if their kids are lucky to get enough to get into college, if they can afford to send them.
Right.
So the president is going to be talking about how the election in 2020 was stolen from him by Joe Biden and the Democrats, and he's going to push for the passage of this bill that's going to require American voters to show proof that they are U.S. citizens when they present themselves at the polls. This law this bill seems like dead in the water, right? I mean, they can't get enough Republicans on board to do it. John Thune's been very clear about that. What's going on?
Democrats certainly aren't going to.
No.
John Fetterman, his ass might do it.
And in reality, does Trump really think this is a real issue? Does he really think that the election was stolen from him in 2020? Does he really think that there's widespread and voter fraud to the extent that it actually affects the result of any election in the country? I mean, or is this just all bullshit? I mean, what is this really about? Because it seems to me like it's about disenfranchising Democrats, because the Republicans think the Democrats are less likely to be able to come up with to bring a passport to the polls or whatever, when hilariously it's actually Republicans who have fewer Republicans have passports than Democrats. So the only really effect is going to be on Democratic women, because they're more likely to have not changed their names to their husbands' names when they got married. So their birth certificate is not likely to match their driver's license, which, by the way, the driver's license isn't good enough. It's not likely to match their passport. I mean, what is this about, really?
I don't know what's in his mind on this. I mean, I got to be honest. I assumed that he was lying through his teeth when he kept talking about the election being stolen. Meaning, I thought he was actively lying, not deluded, not delusional, not making it up. Like, meaning, it's one thing if somebody says, hey, I believe this thing is happening, and they're serious about it, and they could be wrong, despite what they were thinking. I thought he was just lying.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, meaning he really could be into the full-blown delusion. Like, basically, he's gotten high off his own supply, something that raps that for a very long time did not do. Don't get high on your own supply. There are consequences for that. He seems to have fully embodied the delusion and the idea, but there's a meta narrative associated with this about, as you point out, people worried about healthcare, people worried about education, people worried about feeding their kids, people worried about all of these things that affect their life and their capability of living. And he's coming out and talking about something that happened 4 years ago. That
to him, that he lost an election.
Because that's all he cares about.
I don't think it's good, like, honestly, when either party talks about, like, Democrats are like, oh, we have to protect your ability to vote. And what they mean is, we want to protect your ability to vote for us.
Yes.
And
for
Republicans,
me.
me. And elections aren't about me. They're about you, right? And so that's what voters want to hear. What are you going to do for us? And I don't see either party messaging well on this, but the president really got to. I mean, Democrats aren't messaging at all on anything. But I mean, I don't know. The only thing that's happened of note is that 103 Democrats voted for Thomas Massey's bill that to strip Israel of its $3.3 billion a year in funding.
Yes.
But otherwise, they're not
I
doing
think
shit.
this is great on a certain level. I want people to get meaning I firmly want people to realize that their government doesn't give a shit about them.
Yeah.
And for the president to get up there and give a speech like this,
so tone deaf, so clueless.
Yeah, it's so tone deaf. You are at war, and you're at war in a way that the American public is firmly against. When the Iranians were out there at the funeral, they were calling for blood. They were calling for Trump's head. There's an effigy of Trump that they literally burned. If I'm not mistaken, there's a Trump poster or something like that.
There's a coffin, like a
that's what it is, a coffin.
Mm-hmm.
They are firmly behind their country, fighting an empire.
Yeah.
Whereas the empire is firmly against its country, its president going to war on its own with a Congress that has completely relinquished responsibility to hold the president accountable, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority is against it. Meaning, the public is against it. You would think that the Congress that's supposed to represent that public would hold the president accountable, considering 80 or 90% of the public is against it. They don't. And the president, who is, you would think, under this level of pressure because the country is against them, doesn't come out and give a speech to explain why the war is necessary, which he can't do because he just made the shit up.
Mm-hmm.
He instead talks about my personal grievance.
Right. It's all about me.
It's insane.
It is insane. Yeah. Well,
but it's illustrative of something.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely, look, it's exactly what you said, Jamarl, right? It's like, I mean, I kind of love it because, I mean, I would love the American people to truly understand that neither the Democrats nor the Republicans care about them at all. Yes. I mean, the first step is admitting that you have a problem. We really need that. And yes. So, I mean, this is another brick in the wall, right? To quote Pink Floyd. Hopefully, I mean, I don't know. By the way, I would be, I don't know about you. I know a lot of journalists who are saying, like, these days when the president gives a speech, they don't even bother to tune in. They're like, it used to be like a duty. It's like, I'll check the highlights tomorrow. Because it's like, what it's going to be. It's always the same shit. It's always boring. There's no new information being revealed. There's no news being made. I mean, that's dysfunction. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is dysfunction. And I guess for me, it's important. But it's important not for the reason of the content of what's being displayed. It's important in the sense that nobody cares about the content that's being displayed, if that makes sense. Like, there's a difference. When the president used to give a speech, it used to be important. When the president used to say something and relay something, it was information being relayed. That's not really where we are now. Usually the president gets up there and just lies. And
that's it. And it's the same old lies.
It's the same old lies. Oh, Iran is begging to talk to me. No, they're not.
No, they're not.
No, they're not. Yeah. Iran is trying to end the war. No, they're not. Oh, the war is about to be ended. Okay, you said that 40 times.
Yeah.
Like, at a certain point, people check out.
Yeah.
And it's the lack of news, the lack of content, the lack of credibility. Those are the things that are interesting, but they're interesting in a disastrous way.
I don't want to add anything to that because it's perfect. We're at the end of today's show. Stay tuned for TMI. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thanks, JT. See you tomorrow.
Have a good one, guys.